Are we standing on the cusp of a new era in politics? Many young people believe that and are determined to prove they can take on multiple fights to shape their future. I'm Anelise Borges, and this is The Stream. It is still a golden age for politicians in their golden years. According to Pew Research Center, the median age of current national leaders is 62. In most countries, the leader is significantly older than the median member of the population. The youngest national leader is Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traoré, who's 36. The oldest national leader is President Paul Biya of Cameroon, who was born in 1933 and took office more than 40 years ago. Biya is the only current national leader in his 90s. But if 2024 showed us anything, is that young people are paying attention. They have consistently showed up to highlight the disconnect between what they want and what powerful people are doing. Today, to help us discuss what place there is for them in the politics of the future, we're joined by Arfiya Eri, a member of the Japanese parliament who's joining us today from Chiba, Japan. Edmond Nonie, the Deputy Minister of Energy in Sierra Leone, joining us from Freetown. And Nina Skocak, who ran for the European Parliament and is joining us today from Zagreb. Thank you all so much for taking the time and being part of the stream today. Arfiya, Time magazine said that rare is an understatement for what Arfiya Eri represents in Japan. What do they mean by that?
I think what they mean by that is what you just said, Annalise, that Japan, just like any other modern democracy, still has miles to go in terms of representation. In the lower house where I am, 10% of the house is female, 90% is male. In the upper house, 25% is female. The average age is 56. And, I think the Time magazine has paid attention to what an amazing feat my constituency has done in electing me this time a year ago in the Chiba 5th district of Urayasu and Ichikawa cities, where they said yes to being represented by a 34-year-old female woman with a Uyghur and Uzbek heritage.
And is there a particular moment or one particular person that made you want to do this, made you want to join politics?
Yeah. So prior to joining politics and running for office, I worked at the United Nations. And year after year during General Assembly, I would be pleased to see in each country there would be more diversity and representation in the delegations that came through. However, I was disappointed to see that for Japan, we tended to only have male representatives of a similar educational background, of a similar age group. I found that to be odd. As a Japanese woman, I knew that my country was already diverse and full of, capable, diverse individuals. It's just that was not being represented in the area of diplomacy. When I looked into our democracy, it was the same. Not only did we not have as many women or young people in politics, we didn't even have candidates in certain elections where you could have that kind of choice. I felt that it was important that our diversity, the real diversity we already have in Japan, and I don't, by that I mean age, gender, life experiences, places where people come from, that kind of diversity needed to be represented more.
Absolutely. Edmond, I'm curious about your story. You're a mechanical engineer and entrepreneur, very successful one at that, actually, the founder of a construction management platform used to monitor large-scale projects in West Africa and beyond. What made you decide to join politics on top of everything else that you had going for you?
It really was based on a call from the president of the country. I actually came back home for a brief while with my family for a vacation. At the time, I was working for UNICEF in Sweden. I came home and I just happened to come home at a time when there was an energy crisis, which negatively affected several sectors, but most importantly, health. Where it brought several of our hospitals to a grinding stop for about a week. So in the aftermath of this, the president decided to make some changes. And he decided to bring in a younger person into the sector to see if an injection of not only youth and energy, but also coming from the United Nations and having an international viewpoint and a drive to make definite impacts and change would be helpful to this scenario. It's the first time I've ever worked for government or the public sector. So it's definitely been a steep learning curve, but I'm enjoying myself. And I find that there are a lot of talented people in governments, and they've all just always needed support and encouragement to make things happen.
I guess when the president calls, you do answer. Nina, you led your country, Croatia, the first ever independent Gen Z electoral list running for the EU Parliament. You said it was an experiment to see what was possible because no one had ever done it. What did you learn from that experience?
Actually, I've learned a lot, and I think about it every day because this is definitely something that has changed my life. I learned that politics, that nobody's going to roll a red carpet when you want to go into politics. People are going to be very skeptical. Unfortunately, in the Croatia where I come from, politicians, like people perceive criminals better than politicians. So when you have interest in politics, it is very hard to convince people that you can really bring a positive change. And unfortunately, of course, as a young woman in politics, you face a lot of challenges. I'm also perceived as an influencer because this is also something I do. A majority of people perceive me as an influencer, somebody who does TikToks, who does Instagram. So it is really hard to kind of convince people that even though you are a young woman, you record TikToks, you can still be capable of bringing positive change in your society.
Interesting that people still think in terms of labels, right? And I mean, it speaks volumes about where we still are when it comes to that stigma. Arfiya, as we said at the start, you mark a sharp break from your peers. The average age of lawmakers, as you said, is 56. The median age in Japan is 49. How would you say that reflects on the way politics is done and on the issues that are prioritized, for example?
Thank you. That's a great question. It's something I think about every day. It has direct impact on policies that get prioritized and laws that pass. One of the things I was shocked by when I joined the parliament was that most of our first years, people who are elected to the parliament for the first time, tend to be in their 40s. That's not a bad thing. It's great to have age diversity. But that sets us in the parliament 20 years behind the corporate sector, where young people coming in are in their 20s. It naturally sets a tone within the parliament where only fresh voices that are coming in are 20 years behind that of the rest of Japan. And obviously that has significant impact on debates that happen and issues that are brought into law and brought into prioritization.
Indeed. And it is quite sad, isn't it? And that is, I guess, where the disconnect comes from. Edmond, you sit on the other side of the spectrum because the median age in Sierra Leone is 18. 80% of the population is 35 and under, according to a 2015 census. Can you talk to us about the role of the youth in the future of your country? And do you think they are aware of the responsibility that lies with them?
Yeah, thank you. A lot has happened in Sierra Leone over the last 6 years to improve representation of the youth and representation of women in politics. The parliament passed a bill that required minimum 30% representation of women by the political parties. And because of this, now in parliament, we have over 30% women in parliament. In our cabinet right now, we also have over 30% of female cabinet ministers. And interestingly enough, our chief minister, who is the third most senior person in government, is 36. So there's a lot of change happening. There are a lot of young leaders coming both in the governing party and in the opposition. It's very good to see. And I think many people are very motivated and inspired by where we see politics and where we see governance in the coming 20, 30 years.
That's quite cool, isn't it? Because as opposed to what Nina was just saying, how difficult it is to convince people that politics is a nice and interesting path ahead in terms of career. You said that criminals are more respected than politicians sometimes. We've done this show before. We've talked to young politicians once before, and many viewers reacted to our first Young Politicians episode online. Here's one comment from YouTube. All young people have wanted to change the world. They historically don't show up to vote, though. Hope Gen Z continues to show up. Nina, would you say that this idea that young people are simply not interested in politics is perhaps not the real one, is not completely right? What's happening here is perhaps young people are not interested in politics like politics are being done right now.
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree. I think young people are interested, but politics is not presented to them in a way they can even get interested in that. So I believe the first step is to make politics more approachable to youth. I believe political parties really need to push these efforts to push more young people in politics. They need to present more young people in their political parties. Unfortunately, today's system is not like that. Parties still work in a very old-fashioned way. So yes, I believe young people are interested, but they just need a bit of a push. They need somebody who's going to introduce them into politics and who's going to make politics approachable and a bit more fun. And I don't think that's a hard task, but rarely who does it, at least in the European context.
And from the UK, we spoke to Fiona Lally, the National Campaigns Coordinator of the Revolutionary Communist Party, who raised an interesting point on youth engagement. Take a look.
People are thinking about the future. What does this society offer them? And it's not really a lot. And so I think we're going to see this expressed, and also not just through elections. Elections are just a snapshot of a certain mood at a certain time.
Edmond, you mentioned this before, that people in Sierra Leone are feeling a bit more positive towards politics. Would you say that this, again, has something to do with the young members of the government, young members of cabinet right now, but would you say that this is a trend that can continue? Do you see, I don't know, children around you speaking about dreaming of becoming politicians, for example? Is this something that you can keep?
Yeah, I think so. We were in one of the cities in Sierra Leone a couple of weekends ago, and there was a group of children that just finished summer school. And we went to just say hi to them, ask them how summer school went, and encourage them to get ready for the new school year. And several of them went up on stage and made speeches about their want to make a difference in Sierra Leone, their determination to be part of Sierra Leone's growth journey. So that was very inspiring. And I think it was also quite inspiring for them to see people, because I went, it was myself and two other cabinet ministers, the chief minister and other cabinet ministers who are young, who went to this summer school graduation. And so I'm sure it was inspiring for them to see young people in leadership. But just to say, this all also comes from the president being forward thinking. I remember when he hired me, he sat me down and he said he really wants more young people in governance. And so it's only going to be possible if the older leaders also work with younger people to bring us in.
And let's take a look at another comment from our Instagram community after our previous episode on young politicians. Historically, young people have always wanted to change the world. However, often they lose the desire as they grow older. It's as if the world simply eats up young people's hopes and dreams and gives rise to the idea that nothing will change, so just go with the flow. That's quite a sad picture, I would say. But Arfiya, do you agree? Do you see this happening, for example, I don't know, in Japan, where, as you said, so many of the politicians are older?
We do struggle with lower young voter turnout rates as well here in Japan. For example, in the most recent lower house election in 2021, only 36.5% of those who can vote in their 20s voted. Meanwhile, 71.38% of those in their 60s voted.
Wow.
And that in itself shows you the gap in voter turnout rate. But I agree with other speakers here that it's not that young people in Japan are not interested in politics or that they're not discouraged. I think they lack representation. They are not seeing politicians that they can relate to. They are not seeing issues brought forward that they can feel passionate about. And I see young people in Japan thrive all over in different industries, in NGOs, in the corporate world, in social activism. We're just not seeing that represented in the political world. And I think this is the last push we need to get more young passion and motivation and, of course, representation. And that's something I'd like to push forward with my own platform that I've been given as well.
And there are multiple ways, right, of participating. I mean, so many young people this year, we've seen them camping outside of their universities to convey one message. We've seen them protesting in multiple capitals around the world to voice what they thought was fair and just. And Nina, you showed one way of campaigning that I wanted to share here with the program. Here's Nina at a pub quiz she organized during her campaign. And I wanted to ask you where this idea came from, and if this was your attempt to try and speak to the youth as opposed to about them.
Yeah, one of my main points that I wanted to convey in my campaign was to educate young people on European Union and European elections, because European elections are something very new in Croatia. We are the newest member of the European Union. So many young people don't have a knowledge about the EU. And I figured out, okay, what can be a fun way to educate people on these issues? What do young people like? We like pub quizzes, we like events, we like social media. So I basically utilized this platform to convey the message I wanted to convey in a non-conventional way. I also organized a flea market where we were exchanging clothing, because one of my main points was also about sustainability of fashion. So I wanted to act rather than just talk about some issues. I wanted to show how some issues can be solved in practice.
And from the US, lawyer Cheyenne Hunt spoke to us about the importance of holding on to hope despite the formidable challenges this generation faces. Take a listen.
And I think that we have to choose hope in order to be, in any sense, effective advocates for change. Without hope, you regress into nihilism, and from there, we can't really make up any ground. And so, as much as it can be difficult, it is a conscious choice every day to choose hope. And I think that that's what so many in my generation are doing in the face of what feels like an insurmountable amount of obstacles in our way to a sustainable future, a humane future. And I really do believe that young people have shown our strength when we come together. However, just being acknowledged is not enough. We need a seat at the table.
So young people need a seat at a table. Edmond, you've been talking about a lot of hope out of Sierra Leone. What are the steps that you would like to see this government, but also you particularly, take in the next few years to make sure that young people do feel represented and that they do have a seat on the table?
I think it would be good to keep encouraging people to participate at all levels of politics. So even before you get to governance or even before you get to political campaigns, just party politics. And I see that both big parties in Sierra Leone, the governing party and the opposition party, there's a lot more participation at the party politics level. So council chairman, district chairman, various other positions, we see a lot more young people coming up in the ranks. So I would hope that the leadership of the political parties would continue to encourage their young people. The other interesting thing that I find is that across the board, there's quite a bit of camaraderie. So I was in Parliament a couple of months ago, and you see both sides of the aisle, especially amongst younger members of Parliament. There's a lot of camaraderie with each other, regardless of the political parties. So that's where I see other positives in that, in as much as we don't always see, we don't always have the same
definitely not
political
similar in other countries, yeah. And Nina and Arfiya, I would like a final word from you guys too. What do you plan to do, each one of you, in the next few years to make sure more young people are engaged and interested in politics? Arfiya, I would like to start with you.
Thank you. I would like to continue using my platform to continue reaching out to the youth, as well as continue representing them. I know that I will continue to age each year, and that will, I think, put me further apart from young people every year. But I would like to remain a politician who hears all voices from my constituency and represents all voices, especially those of the young, because the policies we're making right now is going to affect them the most. And that's the message I would like to continue sending throughout my career.
Nina, are you going to continue working towards finding a seat at a table for you as well, and trying to be involved in politics in one way or another?
I'm not sure about that, but what I'm sure about is that I'm going to continue using my social media platforms to raise awareness of some important issues. Not only about politics, but I think it's important to motivate young people to stay active part of the society. And that is something I am 100% sure I want to do. For the other political plans, I still don't know, but let's see about that.
Would you say that this campaign was difficult, was violent in other way? Because politics can be quite a dirty game sometimes. It's not an easy field. Perhaps that is why, at least part of the reason why, some young people don't really have the courage to enter.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah. As I said, politics, nobody's going to roll a red carpet. Everyone is going to be very skeptical. I was not prepared for that. Even some of my closest family members kind of betrayed me. They didn't support me in this idea. So it is definitely an emotional roller coaster and something that can literally change the perspective of life and the society. So especially when you're a young candidate, when you're an independent candidate, it is a very, very, very hard process. But I think it's worth it at the end of the day.
Is it worth it? Edmond, one message, if you would like to convey a message to people watching, not only in Sierra Leone, but around the world, because it sounds like so much of what you said here today, Sierra Leone is on a nice path here in terms of including the youth. Should the rest of the world be watching what you guys are doing?
Yeah, the rest of the world should definitely be watching what we're doing. Sierra Leone is currently sitting as a temporary member of the UN Security Council. The president has decided that he's really going to drive to make sure that more people are in politics. His exact words were that, as you said, over 80% of our population is under 35. He wants that representation to be in cabinet and in positions to make a difference as much as possible. So I think there's a lot of great energy in the country. And what I also find encouraging is that the older people in politics and in leadership are also very supportive. So within the Ministry of Energy, we're being supported by Dr. Kande Yunkela, who he's an older politician, ex-UN. The former Minister of Energy, Alhaji Kanja Sise, I've had several phone calls with him to ask him for his advice. He's also been extremely supportive. The Vice President is there supporting us, and also the President takes his time once a month to engage and meet with us. So it's very exciting to see young people coming up in the ranks in politics, but it's also great to see the older politicians embracing that and supporting us as we all drive to make change in our country. And
it's certainly great to see the three of you guys here sharing your experience with us. Edmond, Arfiya, and Nina, thank you so much for joining us and for being part of the stream today. And thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to keep the conversation going online. You can send us your questions and suggestions with a hashtag or the handle AJStream. Take care and I'll see you soon.